Start at the beginning and tell me just the way you're thinking about it. Just, if you don't want to see me ever again, please, let me try to explain everything to you, and then you can think about it calmly, okay? Can you promise me that? I swear I didn't want to deceive you. Neither to you nor to anyone. I promise you. I have no reason to think that you wanted to deceive us. Yes, I have done it. From the beginning. Everything is a lie. Do you want to explain to me, my girl? I am not. I'm not a girl, I'm not Vanessa, I'm nothing you know. Finally she said between tears. Everything is a lie. Witness protection turned him into a girl. Chapter 14. Final. Brian hugged her affectionately. Everything is a lie? So you don't love me? Of course I love you. That's the only thing that's true. The fact that I love you and everyone. That's all that matters. Vanessa looked at him confused. Didn't you hear me? I was not a girl when I was born. I was. He takes the photo from the newspaper and shows it to her. This was me. Brian only hugged her tighter. Then he separates and looks into her eyes to ask. Are you him or were you him? Was. Not anymore. Now I'm Vanessa. Brian hugged her again. Thanks for telling me, but it wasn't necessary. Why? You don't care? I care that you told me, it confirms to me how wonderful, brave and honest you are, but I already knew. How could you know? How long ago? Vanessa asked surprised. A couple of months ago, when you went to Houston. I didn't went to Houston, I had to go testify. But how did you know? Actually it was by chance. I was following the case to do my report and I began to accumulate photos and information. And I had no idea, until one day, the Google Photos app put some photos from the trial in your photo album. Vanessa looked at him scared and surprised. At first I thought it was a bug in the app. But with every photo I posted of the trial, the same thing happened, so I started paying attention, and I realized that the days you weren't at school coincided with the days you were at the trial. And little by little I understood what was happening. Vanessa crying. And you don't hate me? Of course not. On the contrary, my girl. I admire you more and I was sure that one day, when you were ready, you were going to tell me everything. But you don't care about, I'm not. You are the person I fell in love with and I admire you for everything you have done. But I can't. Don't you mind? He looked at her eyes. The only thing that matters to me is being with you. Vanessa hugged him and kissed him shyly. Are you really saying it? Vanessa asked. Really, my girl. Every day I am more in love with you. They kissed again, this time much more passionately. Vanessa felt liberated for having told him the truth and at the same time accepted and loved like never before. The kiss continued with more intensity each time until they simply fell on the bed. Slowly, Brian unbuttoned Vanessa's blouse while kissing her neck. Vanessa, for the first time, not only allowed him to continue but lowered her hand to caress him, at first, outside his pants. Without resistance from Vanessa, Brian unhooked Vanessa's bra, kissed her shoulders and slowly moved down to her boobs. Vanessa had never felt something like this and never imagined that she could feel physically and emotionally with such intensity. Letting herself be carried away by her impulses, she unbuttoned Brian's pants and began to caress him. She was a little surprised by his size and rigidity. At the same time, it made her feel desired and validated. They were new emotions. After a few minutes, Brian exploded in her hands, making her feel more like a woman than ever. They stayed in each other's arms for a while before getting up. Does anyone else know? Vanessa asked. No, nobody. At some point I thought about discussing it with Kim, but I figured it would be a risk to your identity. Thank you. In the days that followed, their relationship was much stronger, full of love, understanding and absolute trust. Vanessa just wanted to be able to give herself completely to him, but as a woman, not in any other way. Brian never pushed. He was just saying that he was willing to wait until she was ready. When Vanessa met with Special Agent Castello, she was absolutely sure of what she wanted for the rest of her life. It was not a decision taken lightly, he had thought about it and meditated deeply. She had even wondered if, even knowing that college would force her to stay away from Brian and that she would probably never find another man as understanding and perfect, she still chose to live as a woman. She simply couldn't imagine her life any other way. This time there was no need to change clothes or anything, it could really feel like a social visit. They greeted each other and talked for a few moments about unimportant topics before sitting down in a small meeting room where Special Agents Castello, McLeod, a representative of the prosecutor's office with whom they had previously worked, and an unknown person were present. We are here to define how you are going to continue in the witness protection program. I asked you to take advantage of these weeks to think about whether you would like to keep the identity you have used this year, or if you prefer to start over from scratch with a new identity, either as a boy or as a girl. Before you tell me what you thought, let me introduce you to Dr. Lasky, who has been responsible for your hormone replacement treatment and will also be responsible for you being able to lead as normal a life as possible, depending on your decision. I want you to know that the FBI is and will be responsible for your protection for the rest of your life as long as you comply with some rules that we will review later. Here we have all your current documents, including your school grades and the results of the applications you have submitted to universities, and as I told you from the beginning, what you have achieved. You will be respected in the identity of your choice, but due to safety reasons, you can't live in a city of more than 2 million inhabitants. Up to this point, any doubts? Vanessa just shook her head knowing that Brian was accepted to Harvard. For the next 5 years, you will receive a scholarship equivalent to what you have had until now, enough to live in a decent place, feed yourself and pay for your studies while you comply with the school programs. Once you graduate or leave school, the government will only pay for room and board. The rest will depend on you. Okay, that's how I understand it and that's how it has been until now. Vanessa said. Exact. You will receive the same as before no matter what you decide. Agent Castello concluded. Vanessa looked at the doctor with curiosity. The doctor is here to explain the procedures to follow and risks in case you want to become a boy again, stay the way you are now, or continue your transition to live as a woman. But you should know that this is not a standard procedure, it is only one time, so whatever path you take is final. Vanessa nodded her head. Have you already decided? Yeah. I want to continue my transition to being a woman and maintain this identity. Vanessa responded without hesitation. You are aware that even if you do the sex reassignment surgery, you couldn't have children, right? Castello asked. Yeah. Vanessa said. At that moment the doctor intervened. Sorry, that's not entirely correct. How is that? Vanessa asked. I don't know how familiar you are with the treatment that was administered to you, but it was an experimental treatment, and except for doing some new tests, it seems to be giving excellent results. Yes, Yvonne told me, and yes, I think the results has been pretty amazing. Vanessa said with a smile. Well, if you would agree, for your sex reassignment surgery, I would also like to apply a new procedure, which I would have to explain to you in detail, but in short, In addition to giving you sensitive and functional external organs as happens with common sexual reassignment surgeries, a uterus and womb transplant would be performed. That's possible? Vanessa asked. With current medical advances, we believe it is possible, responded Dr. Lasky, and based on the results obtained with hormone replacement treatment, I believe you are the ideal subject to try this technique. I don't know if you want to think about it. Then I would be able to get pregnant? Vanessa asked. Well, about 60% of the test subjects have given birth to healthy babies. And the other 40? Vanessa asked. Most of them simply rejected sexual contact with males. Vanessa remembered her dream and without hesitation responded. If it mean I could be a mother, there is nothing to think about. Yes, I do. I like that option. It has some risks. More risks than the ones I have taken until today? Vanessa responded ironically. Costello and McLeod laughed. Are you absolutely sure? Remember that there is no turning back. Yeah. Absolutely. McLeod took out some documents and handed them to Costello. I want to congratulate you because so far, you have been accepted at the University of Texas, the University of Vermont, the University of Kentucky and the LSU, but you cannot stay here in Louisiana. Choose as soon as possible and let me know so we can make all the preparations for your change of residence. Vanessa received the acceptance letters with a satisfied smile. Here is the information on everything you have to do or avoid to continue in the witness protection program. You already know everything, basically not committing crimes or getting involved with criminals. I need you to sign here and here, she said, handing her the documents. And if you have no doubts, I will leave you with the doctor so that he can explain everything about your surgery and schedule studies and a date. The doctor spent about an hour explaining the details of the surgical procedure he would subject her to, the risks, which were basically limited to anesthesia problems and the unexpected risks that can arise in any surgery, and the recovery, which in this case would be slightly different. Vanessa would remain sedated for approximately 2 weeks to allow for better recovery and reduce inflammation in her body. This was one of the biggest risks, but it ensured efficient adaptation of the new organs to her body. Afterwards she would require rest for a couple of weeks before walking again, but if they scheduled the surgery at the beginning of the holidays, he expected Vanessa to be ready in September to enter university. Another advantage is that it would not require the dilations that are needed in other procedures, and a possible disadvantage, as the doctor presented it, is that for the next 20 years, she would have periods that could cause discomfort like any other girl. Vanessa only asked where she should sign. The next few weeks were a roller coaster of emotions. She was happy with her new outlook on life but was sad to have to stay away from her friends and especially Brian. She knew she couldn't ask him to give up Harvard, that would be selfish and irresponsible. Sometimes they talked about maintaining a long-distance relationship and sometimes they recognized that that couldn't work. They only had the hope of maintaining contact and meeting again in the future. After months of rehearsals, they had a couple of weekends of performances of their play Grease. She enjoyed her role, her costumes, and performing on stage in front of an audience, but it all ended too quickly. The volleyball team was eliminated in the quarterfinals. He felt guilty for some mistakes made and for missing so many practices. The goodbyes were full of hope and emotions for the future, with promises to stay in touch but with the sadness of knowing that the stage had come to an end. Vanessa told everyone that she was going to Houston for a month and that she was going to be incommunicated. Only Brian knew about her surgery, but he had to show up at Harvard the same day Vanessa was admitted. That farewell was sad. They promised to keep in touch and visit each other as soon as they were established in their respective new residences. Vanessa arrived at the hospital alone. After a short wait, she had to fill out and sign a form with her general information. On the emergency contact line, all he could think about was Agent Yvonne Castello. They laid her down on a stretcher and took her to the operating room. At that moment she felt really alone. When the anesthesiologist gave her medication and asked her to count to 10, she was really afraid that she wouldn't wake up and that no one would even be able to tell Brian or her family, and about what would happen to her body. She opened her eyes without knowing where she was or how much time had passed. She went back to sleep. The scene repeated itself several times before she managed to stay awake. Distress. What happened? She looked around and recognized a hospital room. I had surgery? I don't think so, I don't feel pain. She tried to move on her own to find out how to call a nurse and felt pain throughout her body. So if I had surgery? I am already a woman? A combination of terror and happiness overwhelmed her. Her first impulse was to try to put her hand in to feel between her legs. Her hand reached to her waist and she felt bandages. She didn't dare to continue. She took out her hand, found the assistance button. A few seconds later, a nurse entered. Good morning, princess. How do you feel? Well, I guess. What happened? What day is it? It's Thursday. You were asleep for 2 weeks and 2 days after your surgery. Everything went perfect and you look super pretty. Vanessa smiled a little. I imagine you want to see yourself. Vanessa nodded with a shy smile. The doctor is on his way to remove your bandages and check that everything is okay. Meanwhile, sleep another little while. Vanessa couldn't sleep. She tried to feel with her hand, but above the bandages, the only thing that was evident was that there was no lump between her legs, so she had to wait for the doctor. Dr. Lasky explained while removing the bandages that the surgery was a success. She was almost completely deflated and that with a few days of exercises, she should be on her feet in 2 or 3 days and able to leave the hospital in a week. Recovery would require at least 15 more days of not making efforts, not wearing tight clothing, and during which time you would need dressings and would probably have bleeding or pain. After that, in the next 2 months, her period should become regular like that of any girl, so if she was active, she had to use some form of contraception. Vanessa was trying to assimilate all the information when the doctor held up a mirror and asked her, "Are you ready to see yourself?" There was still swelling and some little tubes coming out of her body, but without a doubt, she recognized the body of a woman in the mirror. She couldn't believe it was her. She finally felt complete. She knew that her life could be as she had dreamed of it, but at the same time she didn't quite understand that it was her. Inevitably she remembered the moment when all this started, when he opened the door of the truck to find a group of boys and girls, victims of trafficking and sexual exploitation. She never imagined that that moment could have led her to become a girl, much less that she could be so happy because of it. She arrived in Burlington, Vermont almost fully recovered and beginning to get used to the new sensations that came with her new body. The small university town, on the shore of Lake Champlain, seemed like the ideal place to start over. On the first day of school, Vanessa applies gloss over her pink lipstick, lets down her hair and uses her hands to arrange the wavy locks to give volume and fall over her shoulders. He stands up and takes one last look at his outfit in the mirror. Satisfied with the girl next door looked at the pleated skirt above the knees, the simple black strapless blouse and the 2-inch sandals give her. She smiles to herself. It seems incredible that so recently, she was a high school boy with all kinds of problems and would never have even thought about wearing something feminine. She opens the door to her apartment only to find Brian waiting for her outside with his little suitcase. I couldn't be away from you any longer and I asked to transfer from Harvard to this university. Can I stay with you while I find an apartment? How could Vanessa have imagined that this was her path to happiness? And that's all for today. If you like this story, please comment, let me know how would you have finished it. Also, please help me by giving like and subscribe.